Jeremy. I'm so glad you could meet with me today.
It was nice to meet with you too, Heather.
I just have a couple of questions for my interview that I get to ask you.
Okay, go ahead, shoot.
All right, my first question is, what position do you have in a role in this school?
I am currently a 5th grade teacher in the elementary division at First Coast Christian School. I have a lot of different responsibilities on a daily basis. Teachers always, what everybody says, oh, you're a teacher and all of that. But on a daily basis, I'm also a security guard, and I do a lot of other various responsibilities. So those are the kind of things I do on a daily basis. What's your next question?
What is the role of communication in this career?
Communication is vital, I think, in any career. For me, on a daily basis, I communicate with my students. Every single day, I'm lecturing or I'm doing different activities to interact with them, and so it's communication on a daily basis. I'm communicating with them, they're communicating with me. I think communication is essential in that if I want to have an effective relationship with my students and I want them to be able to come to me and ask questions and things like that, I have to have the right kind of communication. You probably learned about in your class that you can't scream at people, you can't yell at people, you can't do that kind of thing for them to follow you in a leadership role that you're wanting one day. So for me, I think communication is vital because I have to watch how I say things and what I say. And especially with the way our social economy is now, you have to say certain things and do certain things, especially in the education environment. I mean, you should know that. You currently work at a daycare, so there's certain things that you can say and certain things you can't say. So I think communication is vital. So with students, I communicate daily. I also communicate with parents. Communication with parents is absolutely vital. If I want to get into a student's life, if I want them to really learn what I'm teaching, the parents and I have to be on the same page. So every single week, I'm communicating with the parents. I'm sending out an email or I'm sending out something telling the parents, look, this is what's going on in the kids' class this week. This is what we're doing. To be able to get them to the different stage that I want them to be at. So I communicate with the parents. I also communicate on a daily basis as a security personnel for the school. I sit there and I ride around in a little golf cart all day. All the students laugh at me just like you are. But I communicate that way that way as well. So a lot of that is formal communication because sometimes it'll be verbal. I'll tell somebody, hey, you can't do that or whatever. But most of the time it's formal communication. I'm writing different policies. You can't come in here this time. You can't do this at this time. So I communicate on a daily basis.
What's various communication roles that you perform each day?
I think to summarize the various roles would be I communicate verbally with my students. I communicate formally with my security roles. I have roles with with non-formal communication when I'm doing things like sending voicemails or leaving parents messages. So those would be really the roles that I perform on a daily basis.
How would you define communication?
Communication is something that's very, very unique. I think some people are just gifted communicators by nature. They like to talk, they like to interact with people, they enjoy interacting with people. Some people enjoy being under that rock. Unfortunately, wanting to be a teacher one day, you have to be a gifted communicator. You have to be able to speak to someone, you have to be able to have them really understand and be able to listen to you. Plus, you have to be able to listen to others. When your students come up to you for advice, you have to understand and be able to listen to them, which means asking those follow-up questions, asking those different things for them to know that you're listening. So communication, I think, is just the ability to speak and interact with others. And it's used every day in our lives. What's your next question?
What are some qualities that you see that are essential for a person to have?
Being a communicator in my career. I think a major quality is communication, like we talked about. That's one of the top ones. If you go to any business nowadays, they're going to say, what is the number one skill? What is the number one quality we're looking for? They're looking for a communicator. If you're going into sales, if you can't communicate, you won't sell anything. It's the same way with teaching. If you can't communicate, you're not able to get what you're trying to teach across to the other person. So I think communication is essential. There's a lot of other skills that I have, but communication, all of the rest of them stem out of communication. So I think communication being first, and the second one could be leadership, third one could be trust. All of those things come out of communication because when you can communicate with somebody, you can lead them. they can trust you, they understand you, things like that.
Very good. And then, does communication come natural to you, or did you have to work at it?
I think in my own life, I think communication came naturally a lot of times. I was always the one in school that would get in trouble for talking in class, doing different things like that, because I would always want to communicate with people, and I would always want to talk and socialize and things like that, and I think that built me to where I'm at now. I enjoy communicating with my students. Last year I was one of the top teachers, and it wasn't because of anything of my own doing, it was just because I think I'm just gifted. God has gifted me in that area of communication. He's allowed me to be able to teach others and for them to successfully understand what I'm saying. And then I think communication, an aspect of that, isn't, even in teaching, I think an aspect of communication isn't what you're saying to the kids, what the kids say to you. Because if you're teaching a class, for example, and you're sitting out there and you're lecturing, and a lot of times at the end of a class you'll ask different follow-up questions to see if the students are understanding what you're saying. Communication is essential there, because a lot of times you can be teaching a class, and if you don't ask those follow-up questions to see if they're really understanding what you're saying, you can just be speaking, and you probably learned in your speech class so far, there's a difference between listening and hearing, you know? And so my students can be hearing me all day, and they can be texting, or they can be doing different things. They can hear me, but they're not really listening to me. And that's a form of communication. So I think it's essential for the students to really understand what I'm saying and to listen and take that feedback from them, because that's a key to communication.
Okay. What obstacles do you think you face in your classroom with your coworkers?
Every single day. You would never know it. But I struggle with communication on the same side of it. When I get up in front of a large group of people, my heart drops, because I sit there and I say, what am I going to say to this group of people? How am I going to communicate what I'm saying and not be nervous and not be all the things that come along with speaking to a group of people? A lot of times people get so caught up in being nervous about communicating that they lose their effectiveness. I think there's a lot of things that you can do in communication. You're wanting to be a teacher. If you get up in front of the class and you're nervous about communicating, or you're nervous about that, an obstacle I had to overcome was trying to get over my nervousness. They always said, when they taught me about speaking and communicating, they always said I have to be low and slow. I have to start out slow and start out on a low voice, and not start out on a really high voice and start really fast, because if you start fast, you'll usually get to the end of what you're saying way before you want to, and you're sitting there going, okay, now I'm to the end of my lesson. Now what am I going to do with these kids for the next 45, 50 minutes or whatever? So start out low, start out slow. That was one of the obstacles I had to overcome in my own life experience with teaching.
That was very good, thank you. What are the benefits of being a teacher in your work?
The benefits are numerous. You want to be a teacher one day, you're going to get to pour into kids' lives and then watch them become something great with their lives. You're wanting to become a teacher because someone obviously poured their lives into teaching. You know, obviously you saw it in someone else's life. You saw their communication on a daily basis. Most people want to be teachers because they see a good communicator in a teacher. They see that the teacher speaks well to the students can actually be one-on-one with the teacher. They can grasp what the teacher's saying, and they actually enjoy being in their class because the teacher's a good communicator. Back to the same thing again. And so that's one of the benefits of my job, is because I get to see people, I get to teach people, and I get to share different things with them and different ways of communication with them in the way I do it. And then I see them come back and they do great things, and then they want to be teachers as well.
Okay. What are some negative aspects about your job?
There's negative aspects with anything you do. You're always going to have that kid that stands up in the back and yells and screams. You're always going to have that kid that doesn't do what he's told. You're always going to have that kid that doesn't listen, that doesn't care about listening. And I think that involves communication. You know, a lot of times in life we shy away from the communication that we don't want to deal with. We shy away from dealing with hard conflict in communication. You know, you're always going to have that kid that disrupts and the kid that does those kind of things. It's how you deal with that. And I think a lot of times with communication, it's essential. Because if you just stand up and you yell and scream at the kid, that's not going to help anything. And you've probably already seen that since you work at a daycare, that you can't stand up and scream at the kid. You have to sit down, you have to quietly talk it over with the kid. And I think that and the way you say things in your body language is huge. Because in teaching, you can't, if you're just out there and you're screaming at the kid and you're saying, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, then the kid isn't going to see any positive communication out of it. It's all going to be negative. He's just going to see, this teacher screaming at me. Why do I like this class? Why do I go? There's obstacles on a daily basis. You have the kid, or on the opposite side of things, you'll have the parent. Every single day. If it's not one, it's a million. You'll have that parent that comes in and says, "Oh, really? Why did you give my child this grade?" When their child obviously deserved the grade, but they try to shuffle it off as, "Oh, it wasn't my child performs better than that." And it's always the same song and dance. So you have to really get on the teacher's level, or on the parent's level, because you have to sit there and you have to say, okay, if my kid came home with that grade, what would I be doing?
Yeah.
And a lot of times with parents, the key is listening. They're going to spill their whole saga with their child to you. And the best way to communicate with them and to understand what they're saying is to listening to what they have to say. Because if you listen to what they have to say, then you'll be better equipped and better apt to handle what the problem is. So I think those are two major obstacles. Obviously, you have obstacles on a daily basis with co-workers and different things like that, and those are usually resolved in a mild manner. But those are on a daily basis.
Thank you. What do you mostly enjoy about this position? What makes you come to this job every day?
Obviously, it's not the pay. I'm not a teacher because I get paid to teach. I come to the job, just like I said about the benefits. I come to the job to see the looks on the kids' faces, to see really, I love seeing them understand something new for the first time. Whether it's in history or in science or in math or whatever it is, seeing a kid understand something for the first time is one of the major joys of my job.
What would you tell someone, actually me, coming into this job, what should I expect?
You should expect it to be hard in the beginning. As in any position, in the beginning, you're getting your feet wet. The parents are going to see you as fresh meat. They're going to see you as somebody that's new, somebody that's not experienced, somebody that they can, run over in a sense, because you're new, you're fresh. This is your first time doing a certain thing. The internship you go through, you'll do that for a little bit. It'll give you a little bit of experience, but you really don't get the true experience until you're the one responsible for the class.